What do you say to somebody who's pro-choice and under no circumstances could kind of identify with kind of your view on abortion rights and kind of the tightening down of restrictions there?
Well, listen, I mean, do you think it's a life or do you not? I mean, that's a threshold question you just have to answer as a moral, philosophical, and ultimately legal issue. And so, if you have an unborn child with a detectable heartbeat, is that a separate life? Or is it the same as just like if I had like a growth on my body that you'd get away? And I think that when you see that, you see this DNA, you see the heartbeat, it's a separate life. I think we have a responsibility to treat it that way, regardless of how popular that would be, regardless of all that. And I understand, I mean, when you're in a situation, I mean, we were married, but when Casey got pregnant, it's just a big deal, right? I mean, it's a huge deal for obviously the mother. It's a huge deal. Well, some fathers don't put a lot of stock into it these days, but they should, right? I mean, it should be a really big deal. You have a lot of women who are very vulnerable situations. How are you going to raise? How are you going to afford this? So all of those things are things that I very much sympathize with, and I understand it's not always the easiest situation. But I also just have to make a judgment as a threshold matter. Is this a life that's worth protecting? Is it a life at all? And then if so, what legal protections should go? And I would note, Florida, we have reduced abortion probably by about 50% in the last few years. But we had a very high rate prior to this. And so, but I think one thing I don't like is it being used as a form of birth control. And I think that's what's happened over the years. That's become part of the culture. We would prefer that obviously not be the case, because we do think that the unborn child has potential and has life. But I understand it's an emotional issue. It's not something that you can purely analyze in the political realm just through logic and philosophical, because all these other things, become a part of that.
And I know it's allowed up to 15 weeks in cases of like rape or incest or, human trafficking. Do you think the fact that like proof has to be shown of criminality in those situations makes the bar too high to the point of people that might need it in those situations don't end up getting it?
Well, I think the legislature, when they craft legislation, they do it in a way that they think is going to effectuate the intent of what they're doing. I will tell you that we have not necessarily seen some of the parade of horribles that people had said in that particular issue with that. And the reality is, look, there's a lot of pro-life people that will say, yeah, incest is terrible, but it's still a life. So they were mad that there was an incest exception. I think our legislature is like, listen, we want to save as much lives as we can. We want to make sure that we're doing that in the most prudential way possible that could actually stick long term. And so they made those decisions, as they did.